seems to be a glitch in the human mind that it confuses leadership for public speaking ability and overt confidence.
Hello and welcome to Graduate Theory. Today's guest has over 25 years of experience in the investment management industry. He's a CEO and co-founder of EG, a data-driven investment manager and developer with over $4.3 billion of assets under management and $3.9 billion development pipeline. He's a thought leader and a philosopher at heart. Please welcome Adam Geha.
Thank you, James. Very nice to be with you.
Thanks, mate. It's great to have you on the show today. And I want to start by asking you things to do with your time management. It's obviously a big focus for leaders today, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts. How important do you think time management is for leaders in 2022?
I think time management is always important. I think it was important since Adam was a young boy, and that's not speaking of me. That's going back to Genesis. And I think that any leader worth their salt in any era, I dare say it was true for kings in medieval times, knows this very basic truth. We all have 24 hours in a day. Doesn't matter how rich we are, how powerful we are, how experienced we are, we still only have 24 hours in a day. And if you're sensible, a big chunk of that is sleep. So what remains, typically 16 hours, is the lot that we all are given each day to perform all of the important tasks of the day. And that not only includes, of course, your business life, because that's just one aspect. It also needs to go to personal care and exercise. It goes to leisure and it goes to relationships, most important of which is family. So if you are not interested in the question of how to extract maximum impact from those 16 waking hours, in my view, you are not thinking straight, and you're not even on the field as in terms of a high performer.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how important you'd place time management. Certainly it's really an all-encompassing thing. I'm curious to hear, how do you go about managing your time? Is there any structures or, practices that you have in place to help manage your time more?
Yes. We all do. Every high performing person has thought deeply about time management. It has developed certain routines that are adapted to their personality and needs. So the first law is that nothing is universal. Human beings are unique. We have idiosyncrasies. We've got temperaments that are different, and we have preferences that are different. So some people are morning people, some people are night people. So I'll just give you a smattering of things that work for me, and then hopefully it's a smorgasbord for your readers to trial. The first thing is revere routine. Routine is your friend. I used to think of routine as that's what the boring people do. I don't want to be routine. I'm a creative person. I'm an inventor. I'm an entrepreneur. So some days I'll stay up late. Some days I'll go to sleep early. Some days I'll brush my teeth in the morning. Some days I'll brush my teeth at night. Some days I'll exercise in the morning. Some days I won't exercise at all. Some days I'll exercise at night. Turns out this type of creativity is actually not creativity at all. It leads to a less productive life, and it is less creative. I'll come back to how it is less creative shortly, but it's certainly less productive because you're using RAM every day to invent a new routine. And so what happens is you're having to use more brain power to achieve the tasks of the day, which leaves you with less RAM to use for the unique problems of the day. So if you know you've got tasks that are routine, you should have routines to deal with the routine tasks so that they don't use RAM, because you are going to get problems and tasks that are non-routine for which you need to consume genuine RAM to solve. So I know of highly successful people, for example, who reverse park their car so that it saves them time in the morning when they're getting out, so that they don't need to reverse out. I, for example, standardize what I wear. So I have 10 EG shirts, 10 EG jackets, so that they're always washed, ready. And I just put a jeans on. I've got 2 pairs of the same shoes. So I'm never having to look for a pair. And so I literally get ready in 3 minutes once I'm showered. I always shower at the same time. I always brush my teeth in the shower. I always shower. I always shave just before I go into the shower. So there are routines designed to save me time. The same is true of my exercise routine. The same is true of my gratitudes. I always recite 5 or 6 things that I'm grateful for when I turn the tap on in the morning shower. So I've anchored my mind. The minute I turn the tap on, I start reciting the things that I'm grateful for. So my day is full of these anchors and routines designed to free up my time for the non-routine tasks. I've found that I've become more creative by eliminating RAM being used for routine tasks. So if you are a creative, I'm here to tell you my experience is routine is your friend. By doing routine in a routine way, routine tasks performed in a routine way, you actually liberate your mind for the higher functions of creativity. So that's just one aspect. Another little tip would be I've learned that don't default to 1 hour meetings. When people approach me, let's say on LinkedIn, they want to have a coffee with me, I typically default to 30 minutes or 45, depending on the person's profile, because it's a meet and greet. I don't want to spend an hour meeting and greeting somebody. Meeting and greeting typically takes me half an hour. And if the person and I connect, there's always the prospect for me to do another meeting. I think we're lazy in the way we set meetings. We default way too often to 1 hour meetings. We should think typically more half an hour to 45 minutes. You find that very little is lost between an hour and 45. And between an hour and 30 minutes, the bit that's lost is the bonhomie, the repartee, the introduction, this soft stuff. So where I find that I don't want to lose that, but if I'm meeting with somebody that's well known to me, I don't have to have that preamble. I can go straight into the work that needs to be done. Apologize for the fact that my busy schedule does not permit more time, and I still try and squeeze in 5 minutes at the end, which is more of a personal nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a couple of tips. There's literally, a score of these, and we could be talking for an hour just on time management. It's that important.
Yeah, certainly. What aspects of time management do you think people like you gave a great example there of, the routine almost
Yeah.
being something that you need to set yourself up well for that so you can
Mm.
focus your time and energy on the things that aren't routine. But are there any other things that you think are
Yeah.
undervalued or people sort of don't take it
Yeah.
seriously?
I suppose books aren't written about that. There are books written about time management, and some of them are indeed excellent. The area that I think probably people don't talk about enough is getting appropriate support through your executive assistant or assistants. So I've got a full-time dedicated executive assistant. Oftentimes there are pressures on her to be shared. I resist because I need her to be very focused on me to help liberate my time. And I think that's a really good bang for the buck for the business, given that, my time my hourly rate is very high. So using that wisely for the business is a top priority for the business.
Mm.
So I get it to help me with personal stuff, because if I spend time during the business day working on, my daughter, the camp that I'm doing with my daughter through her school, I could do that. But if I delegate it, that's better for the business. So I don't have any reservations about using an executive assistant to liberate my time during business hours on personal stuff, because I think it's of direct benefit to the business. She also reads all my emails before I read them. So my inbox, I don't read, she reads. She takes about 10% of it and puts it into what's called the important emails. And I tell all my staff, if you're writing an email and my name does not appear at the front of the email, or you have a specific action item for me, I'm not reading the email. You're just CCing me for comfort. And I don't have time to kind of be checking on what your work is and whether you're doing it well. You know your authority, you know your limits. in terms of what you can do without referring back to me. And if it's not urgent, you have a meeting with me weekly, raise it then. Don't write me an email. I'm not interested in background. So I just say, if I'm being CC'd, I'm not reading it. You have to specifically ask for an action item from me. If that happens, goes into my important emails. If I feel that that should not have been an email, should have been raised in a meeting, I'll just politely and gently remind you, don't write me emails. I don't have time to read them. If this can wait for the weekly meeting, batch your questions and ask them to me at the weekly meeting. So there's some things that I think are important. I think emails are a distraction. I encourage people to communicate with me through WhatsApp. And the reason for that is they then become briefer. They WhatsApp, because of the size of the text box, it subliminally encourages you to chuck your thoughts into sentences that are short and sharp. And then I can literally respond to each component of your thoughts by responding to each sentence separately. And so I tell people, unless you've got a really detailed memo, in which case I think you should present it to me at a meeting where I can ask you questions, you should just send me text messages through WhatsApp. That's all I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, email encourages people to write 3 pages, 2 pages. I don't have the time to read 2 pages. So I say, do that with the rest of the people who like reading emails. That's not my gig.
Yeah, that's cool. I think, I mean, for me, I'm picking up a lot of things there, even just like your really strong boundaries around your time. Like there's really something's got to be quite valuable to sort of get through the barrier, get through that boundary. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's not rude, by the way, to police your time. It's important to let your listeners know that it's not rude to police the boundaries of your time. It's actually an act of kindness to them and to you and to the business. It's just don't be gruff or rude about doing it. I tried to be always soft in delivery, but hard on content. And the point that I would make on policing your time is, if people don't get the sense that your time is a super valuable commodity, then you're sending the wrong signal to the world. They should immediately feel that when they're handling your time, they're handling something super valuable. So when a meeting ends early, if the content ends early, I go, are we finished? Okay, so can I now leave? Just because it's a half an hour meeting, if we've done it in 15 minutes, fantastic. If I can hop out 15 minutes early and make a couple of phone calls. When my wife calls me, I almost always answer or tell her that I'll call her shortly back, but I'll let her know I'm in a meeting. Is it important? And so my wife during business hours never has a relaxed conversation with me, because I'm sending her the signal that I'm on the field. I'm in the World Cup. I'm playing. I don't have time for distractions. So if it's important, tell me what it is. If it's not, let's wait till after the game when I've got the headspace. And that's with my wife. So,
Yeah.
But I'll always take a call from my mum, because she calls me very irregularly. And I worry about whether she needs my help or she's in a bad spot. So yeah, you do need to take certain calls, but you need to be very clear with everyone who treats with your time that they're dealing with a valuable commodity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I liked how you were saying that kind of, reflects like how you value your time, and how you let other people respect your time, and being intertwines, I think is really, really powerful. I was reading recently, I was going through your LinkedIn and looking at all the wonderful posts you have there. And one of them was around, you were saying how the universe is a fractal, and how looking at one day is kind of almost looking at your whole year, looking at your whole life. And, I thought that was really profound, and I can link this in the show notes so people can go and read it, because I thought it was really fascinating. But like, what was your, inspiration? Do you remember this post? Yeah, like what's the sort of inspiration behind that? I wonder if you can kind of.
Okay, I could, yes, of course I can. Okay, so I'm mystically inclined. So I'm very interested in transcendental meditation, the union that one gets in deeper, a realization that we are part of something far greater. I very much feel that my life is part of a broader tapestry of human evolution as a species towards a higher consciousness. So I see myself as part of a great adventure of raising human consciousness to a level where it feels centeredness, inner peace, compassion, and non-judgment. So from that context, I've often very fascinated with Eastern mysticism, which has lots of repetitive patterns in the way. For example, the thousand-petaled lotus is fractal. It's a vision you get in deep meditation, and it signifies a feeling of union with the greater stream of consciousness, which is the manifested creation. So I'm an admirer of trees. I'm an admirer of clouds. And I take lots and lots of photos of trees and clouds. They are epiphanies for me, especially when I'm exercising in the morning, I'm cycling. I'll pause if I see a beautiful pattern of clouds or a beautiful tree. I'll take detailed photos. Both clouds and trees are fractal. They are a symbol of how the universe is constructed. And from the little comes the big. It is the pattern of the universe. And it is absolutely the case that if you live your day disciplined in thought and action, so too will you be your year, so too will be your life. And so be always faithful with the little, because from the little comes the big.
Yeah, wow. That's really profound, I think. Yeah, great advice there, I think, certainly. I want to ask again, this idea of your time management, you've probably, you were talking about the executive assistant. That's perhaps something that's only really come into your life, perhaps in the last, you know, recent period. I'm curious to how your time management has kind of changed over time, because often,
Mhm.
some people might not have that, or like, I'm curious to, how yeah, how that's changed for you, like, from when you
Very
were starting
much.
work.
It changes as you get, so as you get older and more senior and with greater responsibilities. So just to give you an idea, I'm managing 8 companies in some capacity. And I've got 2 investments on personal account that are companies, and 3 charitable foundations that I'm involved in. So there's 13 organizations that I make a meaningful contribution to at a strategic level. And there's a couple that I make a meaningful contribution to on an operate. So I'm always busy now. I don't have the luxury of not thinking about one of those 13 things when I've got a spare moment, because I know I can add value. It's really interesting life, but I need to obviously learn how to put boundaries on it so that my wife and my children also get access to me and vice versa. But to mention definitely your attitude towards time, you revere time more as you get more senior. So I would love to be able to say to your young listeners, treat time as though it is super precious while you're 23, because you will most certainly treat it as super precious when you're my age and you're 50. So why not commence that practice knowing that it will become a, a, a reality of your life? Bring it early, make it a part of your life today, and you will get so much more. I just wish I had the disciplines that I have now when I was 23. And by the way, I've had an EA that's been fully dedicated to me for about 10 years. And she's in Manila. So it costs me a fraction of what it would cost to hire an Australian executive assistant. I can actually afford to have 2 or 3 in Manila. And indeed, I might well go down the path of getting a second executive assistant once I feel that the workload for the first is maxed out. And it's every bit worth the investment. As soon as you can afford an executive assistant, whether it's paid for by your business or not, you should actually invest in that, because that person's going to enable you to perform. I'm able literally to do 2 or 3 times the output of what my 35-year-old self used to be able to do.
Mm.
And what's that worth? Millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and that's a great point too, because I can even think of doing that, like having someone that's international, take care of that side of things. Uh,
Yeah, because fortunately for Australians, we can hire at a fraction of the cost overseas, and there's lots of jurisdictions. The Philippines, because of time zone and cultural and English speaking skill. Faith is amazing. She's my EA. Her English speaking skills are better than some of the Australian staff that we've got. She's absolutely fluent. She's got a beautiful speaking voice. So when she calls our clients to set up meetings, I'm always knowing she represents the brand in a very professional way. And she has a very beautiful nature and demeanor. She's highly intelligent and a very capable support for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it's great to see how much value that someone like that can provide. And you, like working together, you're able to achieve so much more. It's really exciting.
Yeah. She's actually, one of, one of the most important people in my life, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow. I want to like talk about now, a bit more of the leadership side of things, because I know this is something you're really passionate about is leadership and young leaders as well. What I know you've said you've mentored some people, that are sort of up and coming leaders. I mean, what kind of advice and tips do you often give to people that are sort of starting out on that leadership journey? Is there any similar things that you often share with those kinds of people? That's that there's is there any
Right.
similarities between those?
I mean, I think you're right in saying if you look at, I think LinkedIn only stores 6 months worth of my posts. I started more or less a year ago to do 2 or 3 posts a week. I'm now every week I do 3 posts, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you were to look at the content, about 70 to 80% of it is on leadership. And so I've got in the hundreds of messages in terms of what I believe leadership is about. If you ask me what is near and dear to my heart to broadcast to an audience, I would say that the most the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart is that corporate Australia, and I think this is true of Western economies generally, promote people into leadership based on public speaking and their ego, their level of outward confidence. That it seems to be a glitch in the human mind that it confuses leadership for public speaking ability and overt confidence. This is a great lament for me because over and over again, I hear about leaders who are very confident, great public speakers, but are self-centered. And self-centeredness is a disqualifier for leadership. Leadership is not management. Management is about how to extract efficiencies from resources. I think it applies well to innate in objects. So it applies, well to inventory, to resources that are dug out of the ground, but it does not apply. One shouldn't manage people. One should lead people. And the reason you lead people is because they are living and they are functioning at a level of consciousness that should not be confused with an object. They've got human beings have feelings, they have dreams, they have aspirations, and they need to be handled with wisdom and care. And sadly, if you're self-centered, you treat them as a resource, you treat them as a cog in your machine. No human being is a cog in your machine. Immanuel Kant, a philosopher, German idealist philosopher in the 19th century, had a categorical imperative that said that people are not a means to an end; they are an end in themselves, and that's one of his ethical principles. When you treat human beings as a means to an end, you are treating them as a cog in a wheel. You're treating them as an object. You're treating them as subservient to your dream. You could commit a category error, and therefore you are committing an unethical. You are not a leader. You can only be a leader if you treat human beings as an end in themselves. They've got their own dreams, they've got their own aspirations, and you need to manage, you need to lead them by aligning the problem you want to solve with the dream they want to attain. That's leadership. How to align the people that are working with you, align their dreams with the problem you're trying to solve. It's a spiritual vocation. You cannot turn it into like a mathematical equation designed to maximize efficiency. That's a tool, but leadership in the end is spiritual.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's really profound. Definitely. Yeah. I like that a lot. What is some advice then? Like, I don't know if you're across like leadership advice generally. Is there any leadership advice that you see that is like, okay, that's not good leadership advice? I can't understand why people are being told this, that they shouldn't be told that, it should be something else. Is there any bad advice that that you've heard that you think is?
I don't tend to focus on advice that I disagree with. I live my life by promulgating what I believe in. I don't think it's helpful to criticize other people's work because it just simply draws out a defensive posture. And quite often people will say, you've misunderstood me. What I really meant was this, and so on. So my attitude is not to focus on bad advice. The one area I would say is steer away from anyone who confuses ego and public speaking ability with leadership. It's a category error. You're confusing, a skill, public speaking, and a temperament, confidence. Yes, good leaders are confident, but they don't have to be overtly confident. Certainly don't need to have a loud ego. They can have a very quiet confidence, but certainly leaders need to be confident because if they're insecure, they'll project their insecurities onto their team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Definitely. And how do you go, like, you're a leader yourself, you're saying you're running all these companies and helping out in so many different ways. How do you go about leading and creating like that culture where, people are high performing, striving for things that are, like you said, matching their own interests with the interests of the business? I know this is quite broad, but are there any things that any like principles that you turn to, or is there any like things that you use in that process? Is there?
Of course, yeah. I mean, culture building is an essential function of leadership, and culture is real, and culture is very impactful, and culture can be defined not only what we do around here, not only how we do it, but also why we do it this way. And so once you get the what, the how, and the why, and they are absorbed at a subconscious level, it's extremely powerful guide to behavior. And over time, people actually change in the direction of the culture in which they live day to day. So never underestimate the power of culture. It's a hugely important behavioral guide. And it very much is the supreme function and responsibility of a leader to lead the culture. There are many things that we do on a cultural level. It's worthy of a separate interview. We've got about 25 different policies. We've experimented with about 50 of them. We're constantly innovating on culture. How do we send the message to people that we want them to be ambitious and we also want them to be kind? And that means we need them to have a growth mindset. We need them to give a damn. We need them to honor their word. We need them to take risks. We need them to give back. We need them to value relationships. And how do we instill those values is a very creative endeavor. I'm forever coming up with new ideas, and we're constantly innovating in that regard, whether it be, paid sabbaticals. We've got, milestone celebrations where we take the whole team with us overseas for 10 days. We've got a hobby program, connected to additional annual leave. We make the hobby program alternate between sporting and cultural. We pay for 70% of the hobby. We encourage you to do it with a work colleague. If you do it with a work colleague, we'll pay for 100% of it. We also encourage you to do your hobby with your family, and we pay for 70% of that. So we're forever looking for ways to engage our staff in life and living the inspired life, not just being a high performer at work, but we also invest in training sessions. We've actually got one coming up on the art of extraordinary confidence. It's a book that I recommend to people I mentor, and we're doing a workshop around that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, culture and is the stuff of leadership.
Mm, yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious. You mentioned that you have a book that you recommend to people. Are there any? What kinds of things do you recommend to people that you mentor? Is there any?
There's a whole battery of them, and it depends on what is the main task. So
Yeah.
if you want to be good at mentoring, you have to listen deeply to what does that person need at that particular time. And it's a bit like a chess game. So the next move depends on where all the pieces are. So if the first task is to find out where all the pieces are, and then find out where that person's got a bottleneck, and that's where their focus, that's where their reading and podcasting should be focused. on liberating the bottleneck that they're currently experiencing. Because all you got to do is get the next move right, the next move right.
Yeah.
But to give you an example, I mean, like for people who are interested in spiritual thoughts, I often will recommend The Way of the Peaceful Warrior and the Celestine Prophecy, which helps you understand the world energetically. If for people who are wanting to pluck the courage to start the war of art, for people who are looking to develop self-esteem, self-worth, confidence, The Art of Extraordinary Confidence is a great book. And there are many others, but for those who are interested in leading teams, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team is an excellent book. It's actually the cultural Bible of EG.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, there's a lot to go off there. I think some of those resources will be really helpful for myself and for the audience. I want to like take a step back now into like what you were like when you were a bit younger, perhaps in your 20s. And I want to ask, did you have any, like transformational experiences during that period, or perhaps maybe there were some failures in that period that worked out well and turned out to be things that were really quite valuable for yourself? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, of course, a lot. I mean, I would say that in my 20s, I already knew that I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. So that always helps. I often say what made Madonna and Tom Cruise successful. When I look at them, even when I was 20, I used to say this. The reason why they're successful is because they knew at an early age who they wanted to be and what they wanted to achieve. And when you get that clarity of vision about your life, the world bends in the direction of your vision. The clearer it is, the more certain it is, the more the world bends in your direction. So that's the first thing. In terms of early experiences, there's two that spring to mind. The first is I had a mystical experience when I was in my 20s. When I met my wife, I literally felt there was a hand pushing me towards her and insisting that I introduce myself to her. I basically, for the first time in my life, I walked up to her, not knowing her, and I introduced myself cold. And this was her just exiting law school, and I accosted her. And I've never done that before. I've never done it since. It was a totally new experience to me. I felt I was being commanded to do it. And as a result of that, I've been extremely open to the idea that there's much in the unseen world that is real and that should inform a wise and inspirational life. So I've always made sure to feed my spiritual self as well as my business mind and my physical body and my emotional self, etc. I feel like there's a dimension that's spiritual that needs to be nurtured separately and and should be given command of all other aspects of your life because it is actually the wisest part of you. So I would say that's a seminal experience. Separately, I suffered from chronic fatigue at the age of about 21. I was doing my honors year in economics, and that basically told me two things. One is that I felt like my spirit was deliberately wanting me to take time out to reflect on the meaning of the life that I wanted to live. So it was giving me the time to reflect. Secondly, it was emphasizing to me the importance of physical routine and friendship, because I had become a bit disconnected from my friends that moved on to the next academic year. I stayed behind with a small group of people doing honors. And so I became a little bit disconnected from my social network. And I fell out of rhythm with my exercise. So as a result, my body sent me the signal, all is not well. But I also felt it had spiritual import as well. So for me, I'm a student of patterns. So whenever I see a pattern, I look for what is the cause of the pattern and what do I learn from the cause? How can I then now use this knowledge to create a more positive pattern?
Mm,
It's fractal.
yeah. Yeah, and it's really cool. I'm loving that thread. Seems to carry through a lot of what you do, the philosophy and the fractals and these kinds of things. I think it's quite unique and it's really fascinating to hear how that really impacts and affects a lot of the decisions and things that you do. Yeah,
That's
very cool. I want to ask, I've got two more questions for you. One is, what has been like, would you say has been your most worthwhile investment of time or money? And perhaps it's a course you did, or perhaps it's a job that you had, or a book that you've read, or maybe it's an experience that you had.
in my late teens, I became deeply interested in mysticism. I read the Bible for the first time from scratch, the four gospels. And if you do that with a sincere heart, you encounter a real person called Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, whatever you may think of him, was an extraordinary human being and a great leader. He was bold. He was a great communicator, amazing communicator. He was decisive. He was purpose driven. And I think because I got acquainted with him and was inspired by him, I would say that is probably the most significant investment of time that I've made in any particular task or book, because it's foundational. And to this day, I draw inspiration from his life and his behavior and his mission and his principles.
Mm, yeah.
And I think it's really important, whether it's Christ or someone else. I'm also very deeply inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. He's my hero of the 20th century, followed closely by Nelson Mandela and Einstein. They're three amazing people. And I read biographies, autobiographies. I read quotations from their journals. I'm constantly looking to learn from them because I think they're amazing human beings.
Mm, yeah, that's really cool. Definitely. I think like, people like that have done amazing things are really worth investigating further.
Yeah. And I'd also recommend to go, for your listeners, if they haven't watched it, watch the 1981 movie. It won an Oscar for best film called Gandhi. So Ben Kingsley acts Gandhi, and he's so good in that role that you literally forget that he's an actor, and you literally start feeling it's Gandhi himself. And whenever I feel I'm in need of inspiration, I watch that movie.
Mm,
The power of a person, one individual with principles and a desire and the ticket to sacrifice for the principle.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'll have to give it a watch.
You should watch it. It's an amazing movie. You need a couple hours.
Okay, sure. And I've got one last question for you, Adam, just to finish off. And that is, a lot of the listeners here are younger. They're perhaps starting their careers or in the first few years of their career. And I wonder if there's any advice or any lessons that you would, even thinking back to your own experience at that time, any advice that you would give yourself if you in that position again.
Yeah, I think dream big, be bold. It takes just as much effort to achieve big goals as it does small ones. So might as well dream big and make sure you believe in yourself. So I'm going to write a series of micro blogs on self-belief, because it's becoming apparent to me that a number of people that are beginning on their entrepreneurial journey, they just need to increase their self-belief. And self-belief means no matter what happens, no matter what task, or up to the task, equal to and up to the task. This type of self-worth, this type of self-belief, and is absolutely indispensable to success. And then I would just say, go out and find a mentor or two. I have two or three at any given time, and I mentor about 6 or 7 because I believe the world is a big circle. So when you're receiving, you need to give. And then the universe keeps giving you more and more mentors if you're mentoring others. And so I would definitely say, believe in yourself, dream big, and surround yourself by 1 or 2 wise mentors, and go for walks in the park with them and put the problems of the week in front of them and ask them what they think you should do. And if you do that often enough, you'll gain a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Certainly, it's been fascinating chatting to you today, Adam. So much
Likewise.
wisdom and value in here, I think, for people around productivity, leadership, and all those kinds of things we've discussed. If someone is listening and they want to find out more about yourself and more about what you do, where would you like people to go to find out more?
I think My LinkedIn profile is the only place where about business. In time, I will also set up a separate blog on spirituality and philosophy because I think they are hugely valuable in guiding a human life. But I haven't begun that yet. It's a separate website that I'll set up. So my LinkedIn profile, Adam Geha at EG, and you can also find out a bit about EG by visiting the EG website, eg.com.au. You'll find out a little bit about our BIG thinking, which is build in good thinking, how to integrate philosophical principles into the very fabric of your business.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing that with us, and thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, James.
It's been fascinating.
It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got something out of it, and I certainly did. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the Graduate Theory newsletter. You'll get the episode and my takeaways straight to your inbox every single week. Thanks so much for listening again today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.